Hello everyone, welcome to the Living Process Podcast video number 34. My name is David Getson, and today some interesting things happen coming to you from the pergola behind the apartment building. There was a rally for the Kennedy campaign, which I've been volunteering for, and many fantastic people participating in that. And thank you guys so much. I'm glad to be a part of everything. And it's very important, and one of the things that's extremely important, the title of this alludes to it. Is the Kennedy campaign important to what people are perceiving, even at a popular level, about this analogy between Rome and the United States? What does it say for our futures? And I have my own opinion on this. I'll say exactly at the beginning, I think that what it states is that we are all forging our own destiny. Is that a pat answer? No, not necessarily. I'll explain why and how this works. This is partly due, thank you very much, to a request that I got for someone to follow up with something that I said about all of this, because it really struck me, something that he said during his campaign speech, his campaign launch speech. There was the phrase he ended on, I thought, either intentionally or unintentionally, echoed and also made itself distinct from the rhetoric of Roman history. And it was original. There's nothing in the Roman histories and biographies that I can find. So anyways, at the end of it, he says very poetically, very importantly, in terms of defending principles, as we are a nation of laws, not men, give me a piece of ground and a sword, and I will take back this country. And Roman history has been much bloodier, I think, even though the total number of people killed in conflicts, you can analyze that all you want. Modern life is a lot less bloody than ancient life. At the same time, there are consistent things to human history, and something that I think is very beneficial. Just imagine this, a national leader of the United States who understands classical literature and understands the importance of it. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s father certainly understood such things. He quoted an early important childhood memory of mine, seeing the video and documentaries of how after MLK was shot, that Robert Kennedy quoted Aeschylus, quoted a Greek tragic playwright, probably from memory, because he had absorbed the lessons from these things. And a lot of people say, for good reason, that the United States is like Rome. Just look at the Supreme Court building, you know. We're a republic. We declared our independence from foreign kings, so on and so forth. Now, is that owning our future? Because the future of Rome, my gosh, it went into empire. It went into monarchy. Not necessarily. I don't think we have to go there. I think that because Rome, I'll say it straight out, because Rome had no son of Gracchus come to prominence. And I think both Kennedys analogize very well onto the Gracchi brothers. I'm not the first person to say this. Dan Carlin has said this, and many others. So Robert Kennedy Jr. coming to the fore is something that's immediately outside the analogy. I think this is important. I don't think any of us, if we're really serious, want to have the United States tied to the destiny and continue in the analogy of Rome. I think it would be very nice for us to, number one, be different than to go straight into Augustus. So there are breaks that are being made, but this phrase that came out, intentional or not, I think it's meaningful. You know, and this being July 4th, happy July 4th, everyone, there was what I'm using for the thumbnail, the image of this, is that someone was, the Roman analogy is saturating people's thoughts, I think for good reason, because it's instructive. You can see what we want to do and what we don't want to do. The thumbnail for this was, George Washington holding a gladius out to the future, as if, give me a sword and I will take back this country. Well, there's that statue of George Washington holding the symbol of national defense and offering it out to the future, saying, it is up to you, future generations. That's what this statue says. So there was a way of echoing the bloody past that we are not repeating, that this brought to mind. So there is a story that, and this is from Plutarch, that Cato's father was friends with Sulla. Because of this, Cato and his brother were often invited to visit and converse with Sulla, while accompanied Sulla, the dictator of Rome before Julius Caesar. There was a dictator who retired, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, while accompanied by their tutor Sarpedon, which means lizard tooth. He was probably a toothless old teacher from Greece. Sulla's home resembled a dungeon more than an abode, with shrieks of the tortured echoing through the halls. Witnessing these horrors, the young Cato firmly asked his tutor, "Why does nobody kill this man?" Sarpedon replied, "Dear child, that is because they fear him more than they hate him." The perhaps 14-year-old young Cato, future senator, future enemy of Caesar, staunch defender of the Senate's prerogatives, Cato looked around and said, "Well, then why not give me a sword, that I might put my country, save my country from this tyranny?" And there's a similar zeal in that. But rather than, and thankfully Sarpedon was a good teacher and did not let his, the line immediately in the Plutarch after this is that, and Sarpedon took care to see that no sword actually was about, for he could tell that his pupil was deadly in earnest. You know, it's something like that. He could tell the young kid meant it. We are not in a situation of such bloody desperation, nor do we have the assertion of such violent prerogatives. This is to our advantage. One point of distinction, one point of separation, away from the Roman analogy and into destiny being in our own hands. It's interesting, and I think it also echoes this, but it echoes two things. The statement at the end of the speech echoes what I'm about to say, and it also echoes, what's his name, with the glasses, and he was bald, the senator from Illinois who ran for Adlai Stevenson at the UN, speaking with the Russian ambassador to the UN, and the Russian ambassador is hemming and hawing, and Adlai Stevenson famously, the famous words, "I am prepared to wait for your answer until hell freezes over." This was definitely a conscious, I would be very surprised if Adlai Stevenson was not making a conscious parallel to this bit of Roman history, that in 168 BC, during one of the Syrian wars between Rome and the East, this is before Sulla, before the late Republic, well before Caesar, this is like even when the time of Scipio Africanus was a young man. So Gaius Popilius Laenus, I'm always forgetting who this is. AI is a miracle sometimes for research. Gaius Popilius Laenus and the Egyptian king Ptolemy VI, Philometor, for those wanting to look this up. And this is in, who is this? This is in Livy. The source for this is Ab Urbe Condita, from the founding of the city. It's in the annals of Livy. So Roman envoy is sent, and the spear as a symbol of the Roman diplomat, as a symbol of office. Rome would declare war by throwing a spear symbolically over a boundary, which the Romans considered sacred. They would throw a spear over the boundary into enemy territory, and that was how they declared war, by the shot across the bow, so to speak. So this diplomat, Gaius, they were all named Gaius. It means rooster, noble rooster, Gaius, Pico de Gallo. So Gaius was holding this spear and speaking perhaps on the beach at the harbor in Alexandria with this king, this decadent old Greek king of Egypt. And they're having negotiations, international diplomacy about wars, about ending wars, about what we would call a ceasefire probably, or about alliances. The old crafty Greek king says something along the lines of, "Well, I need some time. Let me get back to you, young man." And at that point, the Roman diplomat Gaius just smiles, takes his spear that he's holding, his implement of office, turns it upside down, walks around the king very slowly in a circle. And the king knows that if this spear is thrown, there's a declaration of war. He steps back, turns the spear upright, and leans in, saying, "I will have your answer before you leave that circle, or Rome will withdraw her friendship." And this kind of strength through assertive diplomacy, which in a tense moment of potentially catastrophic international risk of war in the Cuban Missile Crisis, Adlai Stevenson knowingly echoed to the Russian diplomat. This, rather than the bloody zeal of Cato, who came to a very bad end, who basically painted Caesar into a corner of crossing the Rubicon. It is this kind of diplomatic strength that is not easy, but is necessary. And there is already the sense in not just the campaign of Robert Kennedy, not just the rhetoric. And rhetoric isn't nothing. Rhetoric is how you communicate. Rhetoric is how you help someone to understand something. It's not just the art of persuasion, it is that, but it's also the art of seeing the learning in someone else and knowing that and fitting your words to it. It's very important. Rhetoric is what gets things done. All politics is talking. That isn't war. It's all rhetoric. It's all talking. But it's rhetoric with a purpose. Not only in the rhetoric of this campaign, but in the experience of this man's life. Being a litigator for the environment, being a litigator for working people, being a litigator for healthcare. All of this is important. All of this is useful. And furthermore, I believe that this candidacy, brought to mind somewhat consciously or unconsciously by this echo of not being like Cato, of sharing the sentiment of defending liberty, the same as Cato, but not taking the bloody zeal of Cato, taking the higher road of diplomatic strength. This is important, and I'm glad to see it. So, happy 4th of July, 2023. It's going to be very interesting. I'll check in with you later. Thank you for listening.